Well, it's not under the best of circumstances here. I still feel like it's time for another episode of... Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel here, and didn't expect to make another episode of my Calgary Hitmen in 4 under the circumstances here, but I still feel that this episode is warranted to at least put a bow on the WHL regular season, the 2019-20 WHL regular season, and may I add the 25th season for the Calgary Hitmen here. And as you know, it's all out there that given recent world events that all major league sports have been postponed or paused, or some events canceled altogether here. Well, the case with the 2019-20 WHL regular season there, they decided to call the season off and cancel the season and end it where it is right now. Playoffs, well, we still don't know because these events are still going on, and it's all out there, and tired of talking about it, thinking about it, and worrying about it, because I've been sent home from my player, working at home, and also the fact that I've been staying in and doing my part in social distancing with the stuff that's going on right now. So before I get into end of season business here, if you want to follow along with this Calgary Sports Fans Journey, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, just make sure you hit like, subscribe, and follow along there. I definitely would appreciate all the follows and comments, especially at this time here. Calgary Sports is what I primarily do on my channel as a Calgary sports fan, or I'm also a sports fan in general here, and it's definitely been taking a hit here, but I still do have planned content to still pump out here, as I got some extra time to make videos. But I also do personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and I also share my experiences. Let's say I'm on the road or at a sporting event, and who knows when that's going to be again with current world events here. So if you want to follow along with this Calgary Sports Fans Journey, you know what you need to do. I also have my other social media links down in the description below there. So getting back into the top here, this is my Calgary Hitmen 4 Season 2, Episode 13, and what would have been I would have done first was recap the last 4 games of the 2019-20 WHL regular season, which would have been games 65 to 68 here, but the WHL Commissioner Ron Robson recently announced, and the whole league announced, that they're going to cancel the rest of the season there. And based on, if you follow my last few episodes there, looking at the standings here, no team, I'm going to say, is really screwed in terms of they could have made the playoffs if they had a few more games left here, because we pretty much knew the teams that were going to make the playoffs to play in the WHL playoffs for a chance to win the HL Cup, for a chance to win that and play in the Memorial Cup, which this year is slated to be hosted in Kelowna, BC, Kelowna, British Columbia, part of the Okanagan Valley. It's definitely a nice place to visit, a nice city to visit, especially in the summertime there. It's been 5 years since I've been there myself, but I've definitely seen the changes over the years since, I've gone there many times in my childhood in the mid-1990s. It's definitely a different city now than it was back then, and definitely wine industry. And as I know, the WHL is still committed to have a playoff, and the fact that the Memorial Cup could be pushed until June, maybe. But so let's just get to the business at hand here, and what I plan to do is what I did last year at the end of the regular season here is I'll put the player stats on the description here, but now that we know that the WHL regular season is over here, let's just go over end of season business here. And who knows when the next episode's going to be, but we know that we're in the playoff. We clinched the playoff spot, so you can fire up the Calgary Hitmen playoff train here. But there's a different kind of blockade in that right now, because there was that in the news there before what's been going on right now here. So I mean, the 4 games that were still left in the 2019-20 WHL regular season here for the Calgary Hitmen I would almost say they would have been, I wouldn't say gimme games, but they were definitely meaningless games, both in terms of Calgary and their playoff positioning and the teams that we were going to play. Their fates were already sealed because all spots in the Western Conference, or in the Eastern Conference in this case, as well in the Western Conference, were all clinched up before they pulled the plug on the season here. Game 65 would have been on Saturday, March the 14th. The Calgary Hitmen would have been taking on the Red Deer Rebels in Red Deer at the Western Park Centrium 7 p.m. puck drop here, and there was no game to recap. Game 66 would have been on the next day, on Sunday, March the 15th, as the Calgary Hitmen would be taking on the Red Deer Rebels, this time at home at the Scotiabank Saddledome. That would have been a 2 p.m. puck drop here, so we would have had a back-to-back weekend set with the Red Deer Rebels. And then Game 67 would have been on Friday, March the 20th. The Calgary Hitmen would have been on the Trans-Canada Highways. They would have went to Swift Current to take on the Swift Current Broncos. That would have been at the Innovation Credit Union iPlex, 7 p.m. puck drop here. And then the last game of the regular season, which would have been the fan appreciation game. And sadly, given what's been going on right now, we're social distancing each other, and there is going to be no fan appreciation game. That would have been on Sunday, March 22nd. We would have been taking on the Swift Current Broncos at the Scotiabank Saddledome, 2 p.m. puck drop here. So those were the final 4 games left on the 2019-20 WHL regular season for the Calgary Hitmen here. Their 25th season here, but obviously they're not going to happen now, and they won't be rescheduled here, but that is what it is. And then looking at it would have been the first round of the WHL Playoffs here, which may we still assume that, assuming looking at the standings, which they weighted it based on win percentage here, because some teams still have played 63 or 64 games here, we would be taking on the Prince Albert Raiders, and that would be the first round matchup if we looked at the standings and kept the same format there. As I did say in the last episode there, that it looked like we were either going to play the Edmonton Kings or the Prince Albert Raiders in the first round there. Both cases we would have been on the road here. So yeah, I'll put the link in the description on the story on the official conclusion of the WHL regular season there. As we're definitely practicing social distancing given the circumstances right now, and I'm not going to say the exact words in that, not because I've been tired of hearing and worrying about it, but the algorithm also would be tripped up too, so I want to keep talking sports here. So the end of season business here is that who wound up finishing the leading scorer for the Calgary Hitmen? Well, it was actually the captain, Mark Kaslick, in 58 games here. He scored 38 goals, 30 assists for 68 points here, and he was a plus 30, and so he's definitely, I'm going to say, hopefully maybe the Ottawa Senators will have someone to look forward to, as they picked him in the 5th round last year in the entry draft here. I plan to do for the off-season here, whenever things ever get back to normal, whenever the NHL draft here is, I'll probably make a separate video on speculating on what I've been reading out there on when the NHL season is going to start and conclude playoffs, World Stanley Cup, and then off season, with the free agency and the draft here. As when I've done my draft recaps here, I've done where I go over the players that the Flames selected, obviously, and then I go over the picks that we had in play and what was used to pick it up with to look at that trade, and then I'll look at players that from the Hitmen that got drafted here. So that's what I did in that 2019 video there. So Mark Kaslick is going to be known as the 2019-20 leading scorer for the Calgary Hitmen here. Second, well, Toronto Maple Leafs, would you be happy with Riley Stotts here? In 64 games, he played all 64 games. He scored 25 goals, 43 assists for 60 points there, and he was a plus 14. And then third place, this is definitely one of our younger players here, Orca Weisblad, definitely had a solid campaign in 64 games. He had 20 goals, 37 assists for 57 points, plus 16 there. And then Vancouver Canucks. The next 2 players are your property. Hopefully you'll be excited on Carson Fook first. He was 4th in scoring. In 61 games, he had 32 goals, 24 assists for 56 points there, plus 5. And then Jet Wu was our top leading defenseman. Scoring defenseman here. In 64 games, he had 7 goals, 39 assists for 46 points and a plus 6 there. And my plan is I'll put the player stats in the description below there, like I did last year. So that's the players here, top 5 here. So when it comes to the goaltending here, well, definitely it seemed like it was a split, but I think ultimately, I think Braden Peters definitely was taking over the reins here, because he played in 35 games this year. He had a 17-15-2 record here, with a 276 goals against average and a 902 save percentage here. While Jack McNaughton, he played 31 games here. He's a couple years older. I think he is eligible for the draft this year, and I actually did see some mock drafts that they have Jack McNaughton's name in the later rounds here. So who knows? Maybe I'll mention Jack McNaughton's name in the 2020 NHL Draft Recap whenever that happens. He played 31 games for the Calgary Hitmen here. He had a better record. He was 17-8-1 here. But usually that's the case with backup goalies, is because they play weaker opponents here. As Braden Peters definitely played more of the starts in the second half of the season here. And his goals against average was higher at 334, and then he had a 878 save percentage here. And then we had Carl Stankowski here at the start of the year, and then he got released, and then he actually got picked up by the Penticton Bees here. He played in 3 games, and he was 1-1-1. He had a 330 goals against average and a 330 goals against average and 884 save percentage there. And then when it comes to everything else, that's the Calgary Hitmen's goaltending here. So we used 3 different goalies here. So that was definitely the player side, but I'll put the whole player stats in the description here. So when it comes to, now these are the final standings here for the WHL here. As you start off in the Western Conference here, as the U.S. Division, you have the Portland Winterhawks. They actually got clinched the best record in the league here. In 63 games, they had 97 points here. Second place was the Everett Silvertips. They had 63 games played. They had 96 points here. And then in third place, it was the Spokane Chiefs. They had 64 games. They had 87 points here. So that was definitely a tough division, the U.S. division there. So that's your top 3 there. So then the BC division here, well, the Canada's Blazers, they clinched first place in the BC division. They have 86 points in 63 games. Followed by the Victoria Royals. They have 72 points in 64 games. Then the Vancouver Giants round up the top 3 in the BC division. In the Western Conference, they have 70 points in 62 games here. So when it comes to the wild cards, the first wild card goes to the Kelowna Rockets, who are hosting the Memorial Cup this year. So they're in the Memorial Cup, regardless how far they go in the WHL Playoffs. They have 64 points in 63 games there, so they might still be in just as hosts here, but they underachieved a little. And then the final wild card spot goes to the Seattle Thunderbirds. They have 55 points in 63 games, and the 2 teams that were outside looking in was the Prince George Cougars. They had 48 points in 62 games, so they wouldn't have caught Seattle. And the Tri-State Americans, they had 40 points in 63 games here. So neither of those teams would have caught those teams, regardless if the plug was pulled on the WHL regular season here. So based on this and based on the format here, Portland Winterhawks would be hosting the Seattle Thunderbirds there. So definitely an Oregon-Washington battle there. And then the Everett Silvertips, which I believe actually that's the team that David Wolf plays on, the goaltender that the Flames picked up. He is going to be taking on the Spokane Chiefs. Everett will be hosting Spokane. So that would be the U.S. Division bracket. And then the BC Division, you would have the Kamloops Blazers hosting the Kelowna Rockets there. Battle of the Okanagan there. And then you would have the battle of the 2 major cities in BC, Victoria hosting Vancouver there. So those would have been the matchups in the first round in the Western Conference here, assuming they're going to just push off the playoffs and start it whenever here. And of course, if there's any further updates, you know who to turn to for Calgary sports updates here. So now let's shift our focus to the Eastern Conference here, where the Calgary Hitmen are. First in the Central Division here, well, the Edmonton Oil Kings clinched the conference title as they finished first place in the Central and the Eastern Division here. They had 94 points in 64 games here. Second place was the Medicine Hat Tigers. They had 85 points in 63 games. Then the Lethbridge Hurricanes had 81 points in 63 games. So that's your top three in the Central Division in the Eastern Conference here. Now in the Eastern Division here, in the Eastern Conference, the Prince Albert Raiders also clinched the East Division. They had 82 points in 64 games, followed by the Winnipeg Ice. They had 77 points in 63 games. And to round out the top three, the Brandon Wheat Kings have 76 points in 63 games here. So that is the top three in the East Division here. So when it comes to the wild cards here, well, the Calgary Hitmen got the first wild card spot here in 64 games. They were 35, 24, 4, and 1. 4 overtime losses and 1 shootout loss here, which gave them 75 points here. And then the Saskatoon Blades were just behind. They had 73 points in 63 games here. So those were the two wildcard spots in the Eastern Conference wildcard here. Outside teams looking in, well, the Red Deer Rebels, they had 54 points in 63 games. Then the Regina Pats, they had 50 points in 63 games. Then the Moose Jaw Warriors, they had 32 points in 62 games. And then the Swift Current Broncos, they had 25 points in 63 games here. Those kind of like the Ottawa Senators and the Detroit Red Wings here. So no teams, I think, would have been screwed out that were chasing in the wildcard spot if they would have played those final 4 or 5 games, depending on what we had here. So to tee up the bracket here, assuming the same format, the Edmonton Oil Kings would be hosting the Saskatoon Blades, and the Medicine Hat Tigers would be hosting the Lethbridge Hurricanes. That would be the Central Division bracket here. And then the East Division, well, the Prince Albert Raiders would be taking on the Calgary Hitmen, assuming this format here. And the Winnipeg Ice would be taking on the Brandon Wheat Kings here. So definitely some intriguing rivalries, you know. The Edmonton Saskatoon down the Yellowhead there. Medicine Hat Lethbridge, the Crow's Nest Highway. And then you got Brandon and Winnipeg there, you know, a couple hours apart on the Trans-Canada there. However, travel definitely would have been a lot tougher, but it's hard to say, looking at this regular season here, that would we have been better off staying in the East Division here, or the Central Division here, but we had tougher time with tougher competition with, you know, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, or Edmonton here. Maybe we would have an easier course, but more travel, taking on the Prince Albert Raiders here in the first round here. But yeah, that's definitely just my final business, regular season business for the 2019-20 WHL regular season for the Calgary Hitmen here. Usually this would be the part where I would look ahead to what's on tap on the first round there, as we know, we would, based on the playoff format, unless they changed it, just to try to press it in, that would be on the road taking on the Prince Albert Raiders here. And I think it's very likely, because of the travel, I'm going to assume that under the circumstance, regardless of what's been going on or not, that Calgary would have probably played games 1 and 2 in Prince Albert. And then we would have played 3, 4, and 5 here in Calgary. And then 6 and 7 in Prince Albert, just because of travel. They don't have the big travel budget in the junior hockey as doing the NHL there. That would have probably given us an advantage. That if we would have gotten a split in Prince Albert and defended home ice, that's where some teams in the NHL, some series agreed to do that. And I think the 1994 was the last time that happened, when you had a 2-3-2. And definitely, I know the Vancouver Canucks definitely benefited from that with their run to the Stanley Cup Finals there, because I know they played the St. Louis Blues and the Toronto Maple Leafs in rounds 2 and 3 there, and I think they did that format. And that's how they benefited, where, you know, if you were to split on the first 2 games at home there, let's say if you held serve at home ice there, you could have won the series, or at least taken 2 out of 3, and then you would have to put the pressure back on the home team there. But yeah, I'm going to have to say it's definitely been an unorthodox season there for the Calgary Hitmen. We've been steady. I mean, I remember starting off the year there that we were ranked in the top 5 there. I thought we would have played a little better, considering how we ended the second half last season there, where we made that, you know, run to the second round there. But we've just been steady. And overall in the standings here, at the 22, we were 11th, so we were in the middle of the pack there. But we were definitely if you look at the standings there, the U.S. division and the Central Division were definitely tough divisions there. So, and, you know, with limited travel in the WHL there, we definitely played a lot with the Central Division there. So, yeah, this is definitely my episode of my Calgary Hitmen in 4 here. wrapping up the 2019-20 WHL regular season. Not in this fashion that I would anticipate here, but I figured the Mashing, they decided to end the WHL regular season and this in this video here. So, as I say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sportsman's journey, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, you know what you need to do just to make sure you like and subscribe. Do follow along. For I do Calgary sports content mostly there, and definitely have more ideas to make more sports content here. And now that we don't have any stories or some stories and no games to recap right now. I also do personal blogs, attempt to comedy, and share my experiences, let's say I'm on the road or at a sporting event. Who knows when I'll get to do that again. To follow along with this Calgary sportsman's journey, I also have my other social media links down in the description below there. So as I say here, let's go Hitmen. And who knows when I'll be back for episode number 14, where we'll do a first round preview here. I'm going to say likely with the Prince Albert Raiders here, but I'm only going to make my notes and get going on that once we know when things get back at it here. So stay safe out there, and I'm doing my part, and hopefully we all get through this all together here. And I need my sports back. I need it back, and so I'll see you in the next video here.